you could go to pimp school. Like he was running like a pimp school, a school. He had university for pimps.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
I'm going to be able to show you two. Unfortunately, the viewers aren't going to see it, but there is a pimp who wrote 2 books about the pimp game. Now, I love them.
This media analyst, the educated pimp. That means that. When you think about like the work that you do, how do you work to help catch traffickers?
It's hard. I guess I can talk about like how we find out about them. We will get tips, first of all. We get tips from whether it's, again, the National Human Trafficking Hotline, whether it's patrol officers who are working out in the field and see particular issues of domestic violence or things that happened on traffic stops or certain cases. So those tips will come in. That's one of the ways that we would find out about them. We would also potentially hear from nurses at hospitals who are seeing indicators, juvenile probation officers, again, social services who are dealing with foster kids or group home kids, teachers, right? Teachers who are aware of these kids. So I'll go into it a little bit more in a bit, but what this comes down to is what we call context and proximity. So somebody that has proximity to an individual, whether it's a victim or whether it's a trafficker, and then has context of a situation that they believe that there's human trafficking happening, taking it upon themselves to making that tip is one way that we would find out. Having a victim directly contact us does happen. Not very often, but it does happen. And then we would also do, a lot of proactive work as well. So whether that was something like researching escort advertisements within the jurisdiction, looking for these indicators that may indicate that this individual has a trafficker that you can see from their advertisement, are different ways that we would find out about potential traffickers in our jurisdiction. But from there, it becomes a standard law enforcement investigation, right? So one of the things that would always happen when we got tips is that they would come in with very little information. It would always be, an anonymous tipster. Usually, if they called the hotline, it would be an anonymous tipster, and they would give us simply a phone number or somebody's street name or somebody's social media handle. And they would just say, for whatever reason, I believe this person is being trafficked or is trafficking someone. And so, my job just there at the very beginning is try to find out who they're talking about, even to begin with, right? And then once we identify who this individual is, it's a thorough backgrounding on, again, all of their law enforcement contacts in the past, looking for those indicators. Have they been arrested before? Has there been some sort of sexual crime that they've committed before, or domestic abuse? These are all things that we would kind of look for in those situations. And then from that point, trying to corroborate a victim's story is huge. So when we did have a victim call, we would obviously take the story that they told us and corroborate it with evidence that we could find. So that was part of my job. We talked about open source. I would go to social media. Can I find this trafficker on social media? Can I see the victim's social media? Were they posting photos? Were they posting from certain locations? Are they using human trafficking language in these posts? Trying to find ways to corroborate the story that the victim provided. And that, of course, allows for probable cause for things like search warrants and surveillance and moving forward from there. So it was basically the investigation would just try to determine whether or not someone is using force, fraud, or coercion to control another person.
Wait a minute. So do people post on social media clues that you can pick up on, and then you're thinking, yeah, this person's probably trafficking or is a victim of trafficking? I'm confused.
Yeah. Like, you would be shocked. You would be shocked, honestly. More often than not, traffickers themselves are obviously going to be very careful about what they post online or what they share or what they talk about publicly, because, obviously law enforcement might be looking. But you would be surprised by the number of individuals who share publicly indicators that they are either trafficking victims or that they're doing the trafficking. And in fact, I use a particular case study when I train all the time of a trafficker who would post publicly on his social media account 5 times a day talking about what he expected from his girls, how he ran his business, his philosophy. These are all things called isms. An ism is basically the pimp's philosophy about pimping. And he would share these things not only to train his girls about how they're supposed to behave, but in order to train other upcoming pimps and in order to try and win girls from other pimps and get them to choose him. So it's amazing to me. But yes, you can find indicators on social media of human trafficking.
I got questions.
Please.
So okay. So the first thing is you could go to pimp school. Like he was running like a pimp school, a school, a university for pimps.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
I'm going to be able to show you two. Unfortunately, the viewers aren't going to see it, but there is a pimp who wrote 2 books about the pimp game. Now, I bought them.
His media analyst, the educated pimp.
Right? So, and I bought them. I will tell you, I bought them used because I was not about to give this guy my money, but I bought them because I wanted to understand their mindset, where they're coming from. Because once I understand them, hopefully I can track them a little bit better. But absolutely, there is this doctrine around pimping, and there are rules that victims have to follow. And we have found in a couple of cases where the trafficker actually forced his victim to write down what those rules were. As far as, I'll give you an example of a rule. You are not allowed to look another trafficker in the eye. So if someone comes up that is another trafficker, you cannot look him in the eye, because the second you look him in the eye, he now owns you. That's a rule. It's a rule of the game. And so these things are important. It's important for them to be shared, among their group, and so that everybody can abide by these rules. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Is one of the rules branding? Because a lot of the girls that I worked with were always branded on their face.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. It depends on the trafficker. Absolutely. There are traffickers that will require the girls to get a tattoo, tattoo on their face. A lot of times, maybe like over an eyebrow. They do that to show ownership. They're showing ownership of that person, and in order to let other people know that they're already owned. There's a lot of other tattoos that are indicators of trafficking as well. So a crown. It's a thing, basically, like girls have to bow down to the crown. He's her king, is one of those things. And again, this is not to say just because someone has a crown tattoo, it means they're being trafficked, but it's just one of those things. Their name, their moniker, their street name that they use, that can be branded on them. Definitely. It's not technically a rule for them to be branded, but you'll find a lot of traffickers do, in fact, do that. And so one of the things that we would look for, especially looking at victims, is if you see a particular tattoo on a victim, and then you see that exact same tattoo on another potential victim, another girl, you might be looking at somebody that's working within the same stable. And that's what they're called. It's a stable when you've got a bunch of girls that all work for one trafficker. Obviously, we don't call them that. It's the trafficker that calls them their stable. Yeah. So yeah, that can definitely be one of those things that they do.